YouTube it is Aloore Radio, and our website remains www.alooreradio.com. You can call in on 09039853731. I repeat, 09039853731. The first story I'm going to take in details is from page 2 of the Punch newspaper, which says parties demand 3.7 trillion naira pardon probe. Northern senators disown Negi. The All Progressive Congress, People's Democratic Party, Labour Party and some other political parties on Monday called for a thorough probe into the allegation made by the chairman, Senate Committee on Population, Abdul Negi, PDP, Bauchi Central, that 3.7 trillion naira was padded in the 2024 budget. While the parties called for a probe into the allegation, some northern senators disowned the claim made by Negi, saying the Bauchi state senator did not speak for them. The Bauchi senator, however, maintained his position on Monday that 3.7 trillion naira could not be accounted for in the 2024 budget. This came as Senator Jimoh Ibrahim called for the arrest of Negi on the grounds that the lawmaker was attempting to breach the peace of the National Assembly, among other concerns. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Parties demand 3.7 trillion naira pardon probe. Northern senators disown Negi. And coming from page 4 of the Punch newspaper, that is the Metro page, I have body of Ekiti school driver killed by kidnappers recovered buried. Tears flowed freely from the eyes of family members of the driver of Apostolic Faith Group of Schools, Aloore, Ekiti, the late Mr. Taiwo Olugbaye, who was kidnapped along with school pupils on January 29th on the Aloore Ekporo Road, as his body was recovered and eventually buried on Monday. Following the discovery of the dead body in the forest by farmers, the family, along with police and government officials, went to the forest to identify and recover the body on Sunday evening. The kidnappers shot the driver dead in the forest a day before they released the kidnapped pupils and their minders, who spent 6 days in captivity. Thierry, eldest daughter of the slain driver, Tosin, said that she recognized that the body was her dad's, with his Ankara cloth, pairs of boxers and silver ring worn on one of his fingers, adding, and I quote, "When I saw the corpse, I know the word was vanity upon vanity." That is a very sad one. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to pages 4 and 5 of the Punch Metro. Body of Ekiti school driver killed by kidnappers recovered buried. And still on the crime page, 9 injured in Ogun explosion, factory sealed. The Ogun State government has sealed up Phoenix Steel Mills Industry Limited in Ogijo in the Shagamu local government area of the state following a gas explosion that rocked the factory on Saturday, March 9. The police on Sunday in a statement confirmed a case of an industrial accident that occurred in the company at about 9:38 p.m., saying 9 workers were injured. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. And on collapsed building, Anambra demolishes 2,000 shops. Following the building collapse that occurred on Basden Street, Fegil, Onitsha, on Saturday, the Anambra State government on Monday demolished no fewer than 2,000 shops on Niger Street in Fegil, Onitsha South local government area of the state. The shops, located by the banks of the river Niger, were mostly owned by members of the Sand Miners Association of Anambra State, who used them as equipment and operational offices, while some were occupied by petty traders who serviced them. The illegal structures were said to have been built by traders who allegedly got approval from the National Inland Waterways Authority. However, the state governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, during a visit to the area last week, stated that NIWA does not have the right to build or allocate spaces to traders on Anambra land. If you're interested in that story, you can turn to page 4 of the Punch newspaper. Building collapse, Anambra demolishes 2,000 shops. And going to page 7 of the Punch newspaper, I have Olubadan marks second coronation anniversary, 6 prayers. The Olubadan of Ibadan land, Oba Leko Balogun Ali Okunmade II, on Monday expressed gratitude to the Almighty God for the grace and privilege to clock 2 years on the throne, just as he thanked members of his advisory council for their unflinching support so far. Oba Balogun was presented the start of office by the Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde in 2022 as 42nd Olubadan after the late Oba Saliu Adetunji transited into great beyond. If you're interested in that story, you can turn to page 7 of the Punch newspaper. And coming from page 6 of the Punch newspaper, government removes illegal structures for coastal airway construction. The Lagos state government said it has begun the removal of illegal structures and shanties to reclaim coastal road alignment for the ongoing construction of the Lagos-Calabar Highway project. The President Bola Tinubu-led federal government announced last week Thursday that it had begun the construction of the 700-kilometer Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. The Coastal Highway project is expected to have the first phase of the construction with 1.67 trillion naira. If you're interested in that story, you can turn to page 6 of the Punch newspaper. Government removes illegal structures for coastal highway construction. And coming from page 7, be hard on terrorists, Afenifere tells Tinubu. The Pan-Yoruba socio-political organization Afenifere on Monday called on President Bola Tinubu to go after the terrorists wreaking havoc in the country, saying that he could not afford to fail this critical national assignment. The organization said it was time for the president to demonstrate the political will and courage to animate the terrorists killing and abducting people in their hundreds. Afenifere also called on Tinubu to commence restructuring the country to operate regional governments under the parliamentary system, while his recent pronouncement on state police should be allowed to have its foothold. If you're interested in that story, you can turn to page 7 of the Punch newspaper. Be hard on terrorists, Afenifere tells Tinubu. And turn to page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Pray for Nigeria to overcome challenges, governors tells Muslims. As Muslims' month-long Ramadan fast enters day 2 today, state governors and other leaders in the country have called for prayers for the nation. The Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Fahad Abubakar, who is the Islamic spiritual leader in Nigeria, had on Sunday declared Monday, March 11, 2024, as the first day of Ramadan. The Sultan said the declaration was based on the sighting of the moon in almost every part of the country earlier on Sunday. He said, and I quote, which is the 29th day of the month of Shaban, and thereby signifies tomorrow, 11th of March, as the first day of Ramadan 1445. End of quote. If you're interested in that story, you can turn to page 8 of the Punch newspaper. And from Oyo State, Oyo raises task force to enforce styrofoam ban. The Oyo State government on Monday banned the use of styrofoam for food packaging storage, and other related usage in the state. The State Commissioner for Health, Aloore Ajetumobi, announced the ban during the Food Safety Stakeholders Forum at the Government Secretariat, Agodi, Ibadan. The Commissioner went on to inaugurate the Food Safety Compliance Enforcement Task Force to enforce the ban. Ajetumobi explained that the ban on styrofoam was part of the Oyo State government's efforts to ensure food safety standards in the state. It was reported that Oyo State House of Assembly had on February 8 urged the state government to ban the use of styrofoam for food purposes in the state. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Oyo raises task force to enforce styrofoam ban. And I'll quickly go to page 10 of the Punch newspaper. Ibadan explosion victims allege neglect. Government says 193 million naira spent on bills. Some victims of the recent Bodija explosion in Ibadan, Oyo State, on Monday alleged abandonment by the state government. The Punch reports that 5 people were confirmed dead, 55 houses were damaged, while 78 persons sustained injuries in the explosion that rocked Adeyi Avenue, Old Bodija, Ibadan, in the Ibadan North local government area of the state on Tuesday, January 16, 2024. The Punch correspondent who visited the community on Saturday observed that a few landlords whose buildings passed the integrity test conducted by the state government had begun the renovation of their property. Those security operatives of the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, and Amotekun were still at the various entrances leading to the scene to maintain law and order. Owners and artisans were being allowed movement, with vehicles bringing in materials needed for the repair of damaged buildings. Most of the affected residents were being accommodated by the state government in a hotel in the city. Some of the victims who spoke with the correspondents who visited the hotel on Monday lamented alleged abandonment by the government. One of the affected residents, Ayo Ogunlola, said, and I quote, "We are victims of the Bodija explosion, with most of us having our houses situated within the corridor of the explosion, and our houses and properties were destroyed." Governor Seyi Makinde, in his character as a responsible leader, decided to host most of us who were homeless in various hotels. We were originally housed at Carlton Gate Hotel, a gesture we sincerely appreciate. On February 16, the hotel management decided to forcefully evict us using various tactics. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to page 10 of the Punch newspaper. Ibadan explosion victims allege neglect. Government says 193 million naira, I beg your pardon, spent on bills. On electricity, federal government laments blackout despite 65% subsidy, warns discourse. Power distributors that reject electricity allocated to them by the Transmission Company of Nigeria shall be dealt with severely going forward, the federal government declared on Monday. It's also revealed that in the next 3 to 6 months, it will ramp up power generation and supply to between 6,000 and 6,500 megawatts. The Minister of Power, Chief Adebayo Adelabu, who discussed this in Abuja before commencing a meeting with heads of agency under his ministry, also disclosed that the federal government was subsidizing the electricity bills of consumers nationwide by about 65%. If you are interested in that story, you can turn to page 19 of the Punch newspaper. Federal government laments blackouts despite 65% subsidy once discussed. We have come to the end of today's newspaper review. on Aloore Radio. We are transmitting from GSM studio at the Ministry of Information and Orientation, Secretariat Agodi, Ibadan. You can like and share on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Aloore Radio. On YouTube it is Aloore Radio, and the website remains www.alooreradio.com. My name is Olukemi Omotosho. Do have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.
SafeMusicList.com, royalty-free music for marketing and promotion.